it follows this escort named Anora, although she prefers to go by Annie. And she's played by Mikey Madison, who you've probably seen in a few other films, mostly known for getting set on fire. Like, consistently. Weirdly enough, it's kind of funny how that happened, like throughout her entire career. Crazy. Any case. Well, Chet, after our long conversation about Gary Busey and how talented Gary Busey is, I want to talk about a movie that I really enjoyed. So I've been busy working on many different things, but I've also been busy catching up on some films that I honestly just missed in 2024. I feel like I've done a pretty good job of seeing a lot of new theatrical and streaming releases this year, more so than like any past year before. And, I've been working on my best of and worst of list, obviously. But in my worst of list, I feel like is done. Like, have there been bad movies that I've missed earlier this year? Sure, but my worst of list is pretty thorough at this point. But best of, there are a number of films that I've wanted to check out for quite some time, just haven't had the opportunity to do so just because of my busy schedule. And one of those films is Anora, which has been popping up on a lot of people's best of list. Some people saying it's their favorite movie of the year, or it's, somewhere in their best of list, or at the very least, a very high honorable mention. And I'm like, all right, well, based on that, I should, go ahead and check it out for myself. See if the hype is indeed real. And, outside, I guess, watching the trailer, going into it, like, relatively blind, haven't really checked out too many reviews on this movie either. Just kind of wanted to experience it myself and let it wash over me. And, again, this is going to be a very laid-back review, very short review than kind of usual, just trying to catch up on so much stuff. But for those that don't know, Anora is a comedy drama written, directed, and edited by, I'm sure he also did the craft services, Sean Baker, which maybe you don't know the name, but he's directed, written, I assume edited, provide craft services on a number of other dramas over the years, including stuff like Red Rocket, which I think was his most recent film before this one, which got a lot of award attention the year it came out. And also the Florida Project, which is the last of his projects that I've seen and that I've really enjoyed. Willem Dafoe absolutely killed in that movie. You want to see a really good Willem Dafoe drama? Highly recommend checking out the Florida Project. But Sean Baker, he's kind of been a critic's darling, if you will. And as far as I can tell, like, Anora has been one of his most critically and commercially successful films of his entire career, which is, pretty impressive. So, obviously his renown is growing. But for those that kind of are unfamiliar with the general premise, it follows this escort named Anora, although she prefers to go by Annie. And she's played by Mikey Madison, who you've probably seen in a few other films, mostly known for getting set on fire. Like, consistently. Weirdly enough, it's kind of funny how that happened, like throughout her entire career. Crazy. Any case, she plays a young sex worker, and she ends up meeting this Russian guy named Vanya, who's the son of this very wealthy billionaire Russian oligarch. And as they continue to kind of hang out in the movie and things, she's initially introduced to him because he's, he wants to find a, cute girl to hang out with in this, strip club. They start to bond. They start to really enjoy each other, obviously. And, after they spend like a very long week with each other after, good old Vanya, Ivan, goes ahead and buys her services and they take a crazy trip to Las Vegas, they just decide to get hitched, right there and kind of start, their lives. But this movie is anything but a fairy tale. All right. This film is a much darker and more realistic take on the premise that, we've seen decades ago, which is the plot of Pretty Woman, which starred Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. Richard Gere was, a rich business guy hiring an escort to, be his girlfriend for a few weeks. And he lavishes her with jewelry and, fine clothes and, amazing food and stuff and everything that she would possibly want. And, and she, humbles him in turn. He realizes that money isn't everything and that he should look at life in a different way from her perspective and things. And, it's so sweet, and they get together and everything. Although apparently they shot like 2 different versions of that movie, because the original screenwriter of that film, he actually wanted to be a much darker movie, a darker dramedy. And it's pretty interesting, too. I highly recommend actually looking up the behind-the-scenes documentary on the making of Pretty Woman. It's fascinating. Like, they didn't know what they were even making, like the actors, because they would just shoot scenes 2 different ways and very different from each other. One more comedic, which is inevitably the one that we got with Pretty Woman, and then one much darker, which is what the screenwriter originally wanted. And this movie, Anora, unlike Pretty Woman, which again, I'm not talking shit about Pretty Woman. I enjoy that film. But Anora, this is a movie kind of pulling back the curtain of a love story that we've seen before. What we think is a fairy tale, but have that torn down by reality. And we kind of even see that from the very beginning of this movie. If you have issues with nudity or sex in films, gratuitous nudity and sex, this may or may not be for you. I think the first shot of the film is boobs. Just boobs a bouncing chat. Asses shaking everywhere. We literally, start in this strip club. A lot of shtupa in this movie, too. A lot of people stupping just hard and fast. It's crazy. But the thing that makes this movie what it is the writing by Baker. This is a very smart script, a very funny script, but also its lead performances. I mentioned her before, but, Mikey Madison, who plays Anora, who plays Annie in the movie, this is a career-making performance. I mean, she's always been, like, really good and really solid in the things that I've seen her pop up in, over the years, oftentimes being set on fire. And she's on fire in this movie. Not literally on fire, figuratively, Chad, okay? Doesn't go that far. Though at one point thinking like, are they about to set her on fire? I wouldn't be surprised. But this is her career-making movie. She's going to go from being the girl that Leonardo DiCaprio set on fire, the girl that Brad Pitt threw a goddamn brick at her face, one of the ghost faces. She's going to be, very well known for this role because her character of Anora is fantastic. She does such a great job in this movie. Even her whole attitude and how she presents herself. She's initially starts out very grounded, very worldly. It's like she knows the business of sex work, as being an escort, being a stripper and stuff like that. They do a great job initially in the film of kind of acclimating you to that life and the behind the scenes stuff and the business and everything. But you are very quickly charmed, by her and her just trying to make a living, the best way she can, and she's good at it. I'll tell you what, she's the dances that she was doing when she's, working that pole, the stripping pole, get your minds out of the gutter, or doing these lap dances and everything else that she does is like, wow, that takes a lot of physicality. Her physicality is a big part of her performance in this movie. But just her general attitude, the dialogue that she's given, she has this very thick New York accent, although she does speak Russian throughout the film as well. Apparently poorly, although I think her Russian sounds pretty good. That reminded me of Harley Quinn, honestly. It's like, man, she could be like a Harley Quinn, honestly, if they wanted to, eventually get her for the DCU or something. But I was immediately charmed by her performance, within the film's first half hour. And as the movie goes, as she seemingly, she meets this guy, who provides her with this lavish lifestyle, and she's indulging, and she's not being obnoxious with it, honestly. She's a surprisingly kind of humble and sensible person. But like a lot of people who watch these movies, and I think a lot of people and the characters within in these films that have a similar premise, she kind of gets lost in it and she's not really realizing what her reality is. And it's not until later on in the film where everything kind of starts to dawn on her as things get more difficult, as Ivan, Vanya's family gets involved and wants this marriage to end, wants to annul this entire thing, and goes at great lengths to do so. Some of these lengths very dark, and in other ways very comedic, and some of the best moments of the film actually involve the various acolytes, the people that Ivan's family hires to deal with this situation. We'll get to them in just a bit. But I thought her performance throughout the movie was great. Like, I totally understand completely why some people are saying that she's, should be nominated for Best Actress, and I'm sure she will. Maybe not my favorite performance, female performance this year. But it's up there. I mean, it's hard to beat Demi Moore from The Substance. That's still my number one. But she's great, and she definitely deserves her accolade nominations. But the thing is, it's not just her. I mean, she's getting a lot of attention, deservedly so. But you have a really, really good supporting cast of some recognizable people and then some other character actors. Some people that apparently have worked with Baker in the past before. I have never seen this actor before. Mike Edelstein. He plays the Russian kid that Anora gets involved with in the film, eventually marries, Vanya Zarkov. And he's, very wealthy and seemingly kind of at first, he's charmingly stupid, like a little naive. It even kind of starts out that way. It's like, he's just completely surround himself with wealth and everything. He doesn't really see what reality actually is, but he doesn't immediately come across as obnoxious, and maybe a little obnoxious, or as he doesn't come across as just an absolutely terrible, human being. But as we see throughout the entire film, again, they kind of strip that facade away. We see so much more from him, and you go from thinking like, this kid's kind of like, adorable, but as they go along, you just become incredibly annoyed with him and begin to despise him. But that's on purpose. That's intentional. And I really like what this actor brought in. He gets very physical in the film as well. And I thought it was great, especially some of the sex scenes and just the scenes in which he has to be extremely intimate with Mikey Madison, I think are great. They do a really good job with that. Another performance I really enjoyed in the movie from another actor that I'm unfamiliar with is Yura Borisov, who plays Igor. Eventually in the film, we're introduced to these kind of henchman characters that are hired by Vanya's parents to basically, well, first of all, find him, because he runs off at one point in the film, and they're trying to track him down through the next 2/3 of the movie, but also trying to annul the marriage. And he was what I would describe as the sensible henchman, the kind henchman, the ones just like, this is just kind of my day-to-day job, I don't want to be like a gangster or anything like that. And he is the most understanding out of all of them, especially Anora's situation. And with the film, I think just does a good job of all these characters. You think of them as something at first, and then later on you see them completely different. Because at first you think, he's just like a dumb thug hired to do this job and take care of business and get paid and then move on. But as we see throughout the film, he becomes the most sensitive out of many of them. And I just found, and his performance is not as big, as loud, one would say, as Mikey Madison's or Mark Edelstein. But I actually like that he was so radically different from all the other characters. Like, he has some really great dramatic moments. He is actually one of my favorite dramatic moments in the movie. Comes towards the film's third act, the last few minutes of the film. Several moments, actually, with him, I think, are handled quite well, wonderfully. But his performance is understated, but it's necessary because so many other characters are at an 11 in this movie, and you need that character just kind of grasp onto to guide you through all this craziness. But with how sensitive he is and with how calm he is, he adds a nice kind of just warm layer to this movie that I found very, very charming. And then you have some of the other henchmen characters that are involved in the film that Igor runs around with. You have Toros, who's pretty much the handler of Vanya's character. He's this Armenian employed by Vanya's father. He has one of my favorite just comedic moments just in film this year. He makes no, saying no over and over again. Hilarious. Great bit with he's just going, speeding through traffic, yelling at a phone, saying no over and over again. That just got funnier and funnier as it went. And he has some great moments with Mikey Madison in this film. Again, their relationship starts out very differently, and it takes some twists and turns as the film goes. And then the last person I wanted to mention in terms of the performance, and everyone else is great. Like the actors that play Vanya's mother and father, they very much feel like Russian oligarchs, fucking mobsters. Like, they made all their money after the Soviet Union collapsed. They acquired all these state assets and they enriched themselves. They capture that vibe very well. Very well. And they're very intimidating. Just, ooh. I guess the father's a little more charming than the mother, though. But they're great in the film. But the last person I want to mention, I can't even know if I can say this guy's name. Vash Tovmaisian? I don't know. He plays another Armenian named Garnik, who is Toros's brother in the film. And he has something, he's great. Very comedic character, not in an obnoxious way in any capacity. He has something that happens to him in the film, and it just becomes kind of a recurring gag that is concerning as you're watching. But at the same time, it's really charming, and it humanizes him. That's the thing that the movie does so well. As I stated at the top, it takes a familiar premise that we've seen so many times, the pretty woman premise. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's familiar. And it just pulls back the curtain. It rips away the facade and exposes it for what it really is. And many of the characters have these moments, and it dawns on them, and they realize what's actually happening. And I like that. And you think this character is one way, but by the end of the film, you have a completely different perspective on them. Either it improves or it gets worse, but it's very intentional. Very, very intentional. I think that's great. It's also just a wonderful critique, I think, on the social classes. They have many scenes where they show how the rich and the wealthy and the powerful have just so much control over the people that have very, very little. And you see that a lot through the Anora character. And even though she's tough, and she's not stupid, and she can stand up for herself, but when the powers that be are the powers that be, there's only so much that you can do. And I like that they did that. I thought that was great. If I have any criticisms of the movie, which again, very little criticisms, I will say, it's a little too long. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes. And you could probably shave off 15 minutes at least. Have it be 2 hours, flat 2 hours, maybe like an hour 50 or something. They have a lot of repetitive montage scenes in the movie where they have Annie, and Vanya just they're going partying, they're going to Vegas, they're doing this, and it's like, all right, we kind of get it. You can cut this out, and you're like, all right, we're gonna have a dialogue scene, then we're gonna go back to partying again. It's like. And I understand that it's to just show the excess of this lifestyle, but I feel like that came across. And there's one other scene where, parts of the scene is really good, where all I'll say is there's this living room scene. And it's very funny, and there's some great drama, but it kind of feels a little long in the tooth, and I feel like maybe you could have shaved some time off of that as well. It could have been cut down. But outside of that, outside of maybe just a couple of pacing issues, I do think the movie is very good. It's a great black romantic comedy with excellent writing, really solid directing, and some very memorable performances. Again, especially from Mikey Madison, I think does a great job. She definitely deserves a lot of attention for this film. And Yura Borisov is Igor. I was a very different performance from Mikey Madison, but I think that's on purpose. It really just shows just how different they are in a great way. I really liked him a lot. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very good film. I recommend it. I'm gonna figure out if it's on my best of list, but I can safely say it is one of the best films of the year, and I think a lot of people will like it. I mean, unless you have problems with nudity, or sex scenes. If you have problems with that, you might not enjoy this film. But if that doesn't bother you all that much, I think you'll be okay. But yeah, I highly recommend Anora. But what about you guys? I'm actually very curious. This movie came out a couple months ago, I want to say. Has done actually pretty well. Relatively low budget, made like $30 million, and so it's being seen by people. It's available on VOD now, so you can check it out that way. But yeah, have you guys seen Anora? Did you like it? Were you more mixed on it? Or did you downright hit it? Did you not like all that stupping in the movie? Let me know.
5 minutes later.
Space Cowboy, thank you for the 10 minis. Yeah, to give it away right now. This is my favorite film. Favorite film of the year. Wow, number one. I'm gonna see. I have to go through all my list again because I've written down like all my favorite movies so far this year. All the ones that I've loved or thought were very, very good. It might make my list. But that's great to hear. Vash Tovmasian is a comedic actor and is native Armenia, star of a TV series called Gold. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, he plays Garnick. I love the stuff they do with him in the film. It's very funny. Yeah, I think it's one of Neon's biggest movie, box office wise. Not quite Long Legs big, but at least halfway there. Neon's had a pretty good year. Had a really good year. They had this. They had Little Long Legs, as you mentioned. I feel like there's another film they did this year that did pretty well. Might make my best of list. I'm in the midst of work. Yeah, same. I'm organizing mine as well. Because plus let's see here, you need a different energy for that. Yes, in order for that to happen as the movie goes and land like it does. Yeah, in regards to Igor, you definitely needed that, and especially how everything's wrapping up. Very necessary. The montage, similar criticism, similar complaints. It's not like a big deal, but it's like, yeah, we could shave some of this off. It'll be a little tighter, a little meaner. Better paced. Please Boy says, yeah, it could have been a bit shorter. I agree, my only gripe. But yeah, it's really my only gripe. I think we're all kind of in the same boat. Good enough pronunciation. Yeah, some of these names are Russian or Armenian. I can pronounce some of the Russian ones, but the Armenian ones I'm struggling with. So my apologies to any Armenian listeners out there. And Immaculate was one of theirs. Yeah, I thought Immaculate was okay. I thought Sydney Sweeney did a great job in the film, though. Yes. Osik says, we'll make my best of list. A lot of sex. Oh, a ton. I mean, literally the first thing you see is boobs. It's boobs and ass. Ass and boobs. No vagina, though. No vagina. Oh, well, I mean, a lot of thrusting. There's a lot of thrusting, a lot of gyrating, a lot of like implied cheek spreading. That's all I'll say. Other than that, it makes sense though for the character and the setting. I mean, the movie literally opens up at a strip club, adults entertainment, venue, whatever you want to call it now. But yeah, ass and boobs. You better believe it, KC. You better believe scandalous, scandalous indeed. But yeah, Anora's great. I recommend it, chap.